Eyup, I hope that you're all doing alright. I had a little break from posting because I received some news, I suppose, so I had like a week off. Not really news, but I was also really drained and that from last week. And then like Thursday I had therapy, and yeah, I just needed a break from like making content and stuff, which is why I've not posted a video since last Tuesday, I think was when I posted my last video. So yeah, it's been a week, and I've also not like put anything on Instagram really. I did mention it on my Instagram story. It's not like I had a massive break or anything, but I weren't really able to mention it on my channel, and yeah, it weren't really like planned anything. It was just something I decided on the Wednesday, I think. So yeah, just decided to have a break because I felt like I needed one. So yeah, I decided to have a bit of time off, building and like making videos and stuff. And I didn't post on Instagram either, like I said. I feel a bit bad because I'm obviously able to post to my Instagram story just mentioning that and like just saying, you know, I'm not going to be posting for a few days. But there isn't really any way for me to do that here, as obviously I don't have the community tab. So I hope no one was like annoyed or anything. And I also don't want to come across like I'm like, oh, my poor audience are wondering where I am, how will they cope without me? Like, I'm not thinking like that, but you know, if I'm like watching someone and they post however many times a week and then they like don't post, I get a little bit worried. Not like worried, but I don't know, like if there's no explanation, I'm just one of them that like assumes the worst. Like if someone don't reply to my message within like a day, it's not because they're busy or that they're ill or they've got work. It's no rational reason. It's obviously because they've either been like kidnapped or they've like fled the country for whatever reason. So I tend to like think the worst possible outcome, even though I know that that's not like a rational thing. But like my friend went to this like gig the other day, and I sent a couple of messages just on about like random stuff, really nothing important, and they didn't reply. And even though I knew that they were at a gig, I obviously like I'm aware that they're busy doing something. They're not going to be focused on what I'm on about when I'm just like chatting bollocks basically. And I thought for a few seconds like, what if they've been mugged, or what if they went into like a mosh pit and they've been knocked out or something. Totally irrational, and it's not like a proper like dwell on it or get worried about it, but I don't know, I think it's just like an autistic thing, like preparing for any unexpected changes and stuff. So I think of all the possible things that can happen to like prepare myself. Anyway, now that I've rambled on about bollocks to you lot, I am actually going to talk about this build. So I wanted to do a base game house, and I wanted to use the new swatches, because if you didn't know, the base game had a pretty big update where they added like, I think it was like over 1,000 new colour swatches to over 100 items, if I remember correctly. I've not looked at all the items in depth, I just saw like a picture of them, and then obviously they announced it and stuff. So yeah, I wanted to make a base game house just using those swatches, and I didn't really have like a type of home in mind when I started building. But last week when I went to this appointment where I like got my news, which I will tell you about in a minute, but on the way there I saw this house that had like a really nice front garden. It wasn't exactly like what I've done, but I liked the shape of the house, and like there was like a nice sort of flower bed out front, and there were like a side entrance that went down the side of the house and stuff, and I just liked the house. So I took a picture of it, which I later thought like, is this even allowed? But there weren't any like identifying things about it. It's not like it had the door number on it or like a car registration or anything, and I've deleted it since, and as far as anyone knows, I could be making this story up. So anyway, the house that I allegedly saw, it was like quite small, and the version that I've done, it seems quite big on the outside, but it is actually quite small, and it's only got 2 bedrooms, but the layout actually reminds me a lot of when me and my family lived in a 2-bedroom house. We lived there when my middle brother, I have 2 brothers by the way, but the middle one was like 1 or 2 years old, and we shared a room, and the bedrooms were like quite big, and the downstairs was quite like a decent size as well, with like the living room at the front and then the kitchen at the back. So yeah, the layout of this one kind of reminds me of that. It was decent to down, to be honest. I remember the living room carpet though, it was like the roughest carpet ever. I wanted like a roly-poly on it, and I got this like massive carpet burn on like my elbow, and yeah, it was probably thin as well, and underneath it was just concrete, so it wasn't comfy at all. And actually I was playing once with my brother, and bearing in mind I was like 9, and I dropped him, and the back of his head like hit the floor first. I didn't like full on drop him, he weren't like injured or anything. I was kind of still holding on to his legs, and he like fell back. It's hard to describe, but he was fine. I didn't like injure him or like that, but it didn't half make a right thump. Anyway, I tried to use as many like new colours as possible. So the kitchen I decorated with new counter swatches, which look really nice actually. You know, those really cheap base game counters. Yeah, they've got like a ton of new swatches and they all look pretty good. A lot better than what we got like when the game first came out. And yeah, there's even a few new flooring swatches as well. So yeah, I think it's great for people that only have base game. I think it gives the items a bit of a refresh, and it's kind of like you're getting new stuff without paying for it in a way. But as great as I think it is to like do free base game updates and stuff, and updating like swatches and furniture or whatever, I think I'd rather them fix like crashes and bugs and get those sort of things fixed. I don't personally have like many issues with crashing, but I do have some like simulation lag at times. You know, like if you play on 3 times speed and you're making your Sims do something and you've got some like actions queued up, well, sometimes there'll be a bit of a lag in between those actions and they'll just stand there. And I've got a gaming laptop and it's quite a decent laptop. It's less than a year old. It runs the game with all the packs. I've got a couple mods installed, reshade, and yeah, it all runs really well, but it does struggle with like the Sims lagging at times and just sort of like issues with that. Like I said, I don't really experience crashes, but it's the lag and stuff for me. So if I have trouble with not like amazing but decent specs, I'm sure there will be players that struggle. I know for a fact that there is people that struggle with it, especially console players, with like lag and crashes and everything. So yeah, as much as I appreciate the update, I do hope that they're going to be doing some like they're going to dedicate time to fixing the issues that make the game unplayable at times. But yeah, let me know, what do you think to the update? I know a few players wanted a colour wheel, because I know in the announcement it kind of hinted at that. But for me personally, I'm not like too bothered. I'd rather have like universal colour swatches, but that's just me. We had a colour wheel in The Sims 3 along with like creator style and that, and I found that whole thing like quite overwhelming just because there's so much like potential and so much possible choice. It was just too much, and I didn't even build that much in The Sims 3. I was more focused on gameplay. And then with The Sims 4, the gameplay is I'm going to say it's a little bit more lacking. It's a lot more lacking. So I want the Sims team to like work on that. But I do appreciate the update nonetheless. And I think I'm most excited about the counters that got new swatches. So yeah, I guess I'll talk about my news now, which I've now had time to like process and all of that. So as you all know, or at least most of you will know, that I'm autistic and I have ADHD as well. So in 2020, I went through what's called self-discovery, which is where an autistic person discovers that they're autistic, basically. So before that, you don't know, and then you kind of read up about it or you learn about it and you're like, hang on a minute, that sounds like me. So the way that I came to realise this and like go through self-discovery was through like a number of factors, and I could talk about it for hours. I could talk about my entire like childhood and history and things I experienced, but I'll try my best to keep it brief. A few of you will know what I'm like for talking on and on, but yeah, basically I've always felt like I'm an alien. Basically I didn't quite fit in with other humans, and I would always imagine as a kid that one day my alien family would come and get me and they'd say, the reason that you feel different, the reason that you don't fit in, the reason that other people tell you that you're different and they pick up on the fact that you're weird, it's because you're not actually a human being, you're an alien. And then I'd realise all this, and then I'd uncover that I had superpowers, I'd go to space and back to my own planet, and it was just this like great fantasy that I thought of, because what kid wants to not fit in and wants to be like an outcast? But then I grew up and I grew out of that like childlike thinking, and I obviously knew that I were a human, like for real, I'm not a kid anymore. And the fact that I didn't fit in was just because I didn't fit in and I didn't really know why. And obviously I've tried to be like everybody else, and I've followed what's known as like social scripts, so following certain rules that people do. So you know that when you walk past somebody on the street, you go, at least round here, you go, Eyup, you alright? And then the person goes, yeah, are you? But they're not really asking if you're alright, they're just talking to you, which is kind of why my intro is what it is. I could just say, Eyup, you alright? Or I hope you're alright, because it's always been a really confusing thing for me to ask somebody if they're okay, but you're not even asking them, you're walking past them on the street, you haven't got time to ask if they're okay and like chat to them. So it was just like a weird thing. But anyway, following those scripts and trying to fit in and be like other people basically. And I could just never do it. I could never really like keep up with all that. And I've been to doctors about it. I asked friends, family. I would Google things. I often Googled like sensory stuff. Why don't I like loud noises? Why don't I like tight clothes? Why don't I understand things? Why am I rude? Why do people call me rude? And on. And then in 2020, everything happened. I were at home a lot, and I was doing this like distance learning course about like working in schools, because that's what, it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do, but it fit in best with like my lifestyle. Like I have kids and stuff, it would make sense for me to like work in schools and that. And yeah, so we're doing this course, learning about working in schools basically, kind of like a teaching assistant thing. And yeah, on that course there was a section about autism and like learning disabilities. And at this point I thought autism was like basically how Sheldon Cooper is from Big Bang Theory, socially awkward, obsessed with like trains or maths. The mental age doesn't match the physical age, just very limited and quite ignorant understanding of what autism is. But then the more I read about what autism actually is, and the more I learned from the voices of people that experience it, autistic people, the more that I identified with a lot of the traits. So I read up on autism in women, which presents like differently in women than it does in men. I read up on like stimming and sensory issues and sensory things that people experience. I watched a ton of videos about it, made by autistic people specifically. Purple Ella was one that I watched a lot of, and I also found some autistic advocates on Instagram. So learning about autism through autistic people rather than through professionals that observe it, you get a different perspective of it. It's kind of like if, I don't know, as somebody that's gone through the birthing process, I'm going to have a much more detailed experience of it than a doctor that's never been through it. Like the way that I talk about it will be different to a doctor, which is just how it is for everything really, isn't it? So that's kind of what I did. And yeah, I just learned a lot about autism and a lot about myself. And I learned that many like autistic girls don't go on to get diagnosed due to a lot of social masking and a lot of other factors that play into it. And I also learned that self-diagnosis is valid. It's difficult to get an assessment. In the UK, obviously, we have our healthcare system that we're very fortunate to have, but there is long waits. There's a lot of misconceptions about autism, even within professionals. If you could talk as a child, at one point it were like, well, you can't be autistic then, because all autistic people can't speak until they're like 5, which is just not true. But yeah, there's just a lot of misunderstanding about it. So self-diagnosis within the autistic community, is incredibly valid, because it's really difficult for some marginalised groups of people to get assessments and to get help, specifically women and people of colour and people that have an extensive like mental health history and stuff like that. It can be difficult for them because they're often dismissed, or you can't be autistic because you're just depressed, as an example. So yeah, cut a long story short, I saw an autism assessment. I had a ton of information about it that I passed on to my doctor. I had a bit of a wait, but I eventually went on to have 3 assessments over a few month period, and last week I finally received my diagnosis, which is really great, and I'm really fortunate to have got that. Like I said, it's not always easy to get that and to get support and things, and yeah, I'm just really fortunate really. And yeah, it's helped to resolve a lot of doubt that I had. When you don't know for definite, there's a feeling of, well, what if I'm not that thing? I don't want to take up space in this community if I'm not autistic, so you feel a bit bad. But yeah, I felt really happy and like relieved in a way to finally like get the assessment process over, because it's so extensive and draining. But I just needed that time off to recover from a really long appointment and travelling and all that sort of stuff, which I did on my own for the 3rd and final assessment, because my partner were at work and stuff and couldn't get time off, so I had to travel on my own, which were a massive thing. I never normally do that. So yeah, your boy is finally official now. It's kind of cringe, I don't think people say that anymore. But with that being said, undiagnosed, self-diagnosed, that's all still really valid. Like I said, it's not always easy to get that diagnosis, but for me it was something that I wanted to do. Not everybody wants to do it, not everybody is bothered about having that diagnosis. For me it helps just to answer a lot of questions for definite. Anyway, I am going to wrap up the video here and leave you with some screenshots. I might do another Q&A next month, so if you have any questions about anything, feel free to ask, whether it's like Sims related or whatever. I'm proper busy this week with like sorting furniture and moving bedrooms around, and I've got a desk to build. I've just got a lot of things I need to do, and even this video is like proper delayed, which I'm really annoyed about, but you know, it is what it is. You can only do what you can do, can't you? So yeah, let me know what you thought of the build and what you think of the new update, and any other things that you'd like to see added to the game in terms of like updates and pack refreshes and all that stuff. Talk to me about I'm not bothered. Put in the comments if you want. Let me know what you're having for your tea or something. But yeah, thank you for all your support. I've had so many DMs from people wishing me well and checking in, and I'm always seeing the comments, the same names, like leaving comments and stuff. So I really do appreciate that and how nice everybody is. So yeah, I hope that you have the best week, and I'll hopefully see you on Friday. Bye!